Yeah, we've had a couple of games and it's been a success, so I can just see it being even more success next year. It's just a really good moment after all the hard work that it's finally here and we're getting to use it.
It's an important moment because it's been 4 years coming. It's a joint project for 19 user groups and it's just absolutely spectacular.
We don't call it a grandstand. I would say that this is a sports stadium, and no doubt about it, it'll be well used, well utilised for not just the community here, but for the surrounding regions.
Well, today the community's come together to celebrate this wonderful facility. $7.1 million investment, outstanding product. The community's going to get so much benefit out of it, and there's going to be some wonderful sporting and other entertainment under this huge grandstand going forward. The Tully show will return in 2021. It's all positive looking forward. I just want to say congratulations to Tully and the user groups at this facility. They lobbied hard, they united, made sure they were one voice, and local, state and federal governments listened, and the end result is this beautiful facility today.
Oh, it was a bit of a war cry. It's something that normally happens at a Tully football game, and it was up the river.
Fellow councillors, staff and residents viewing via live stream, good morning all and welcome. I acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of the land on which this meeting is being held and pay my respect to the elders, past, present and emerging. I now call on Pastor Rob McGarry to deliver the opening prayer. Rob.
Thanks, Mark. I'd like to welcome everyone to 2021 and just pray that this year is better than last year. I love the book of Proverbs. It's written by King Solomon after he sought wisdom from God. He did this rather than seeking his own personal favour, and what one amazing thing to do, that someone who was seeking wisdom, who was a leader. Proverbs 29 and verse 20 says, "Do you see a man hasty in his words? There's more hope for a fool than for him." Proverbs 17, 27 and 28 says, "He who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace." I hold to that one. "When he shuts his lips, he is considered perceptive." That's one that provides for all of us. Often politicians are expected to voice their opinions loud and clear, and to be forthright and perhaps a little dogmatic. Could I make a case today that there are two sides of the same coin, and that working together as a group with vision and wisdom also has a role to play? A champion team always does better than a team of champions. God encourages us to ask for wisdom, and wisdom can solve seemingly intractable situations. And in the scripture it talks about Solomon when he had to decide who was the real mother of a baby. He did something that was quite outlandish in a way, but it solved the case. May you have wisdom today and work together as a champion team. You never know where wisdom will come from to solve the problems that you're facing. Maybe even from someone who's quiet and doesn't say very much, but comes up with the answer that you need. So I wonder if we can pray today, and you're facing some significant situations. Let's pray for wisdom and that you'll come up with exactly the right thing that you need for that situation. Father, we just thank you that you do ask us to pray for wisdom, and you have great wisdom to impart to us. And I pray for the council meeting today, Lord. You know that they need wisdom in all their decisions, and I just pray, Lord, that they'll work together and listen and seek wisdom rather than their own opinions. And Lord, I pray that they'll come up with something at the end of the day that they all feel right at peace with and know that it's the right decision. We thank you for them. Thank you again for their availability. Thank you for their vision and wisdom. And I just pray that your blessing will be upon this meeting in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Father.
Thanks.
Thank you, Father.
Okay, we move on to apologies. Are there any apologies for today's meeting? Take that as a no. Move on to declaration of conflict. Councillors and staff, declaration of prescribed conflicts of interest or declarable conflicts of interest. Please use this opportunity to make public any prescribed conflict of interest or declarable conflict of interest in respect of the items in the agenda. Councillors should use this opportunity to disclose and or comment on other councillors and or staff interests in accordance with the Act and the regulations. Councillors, do we have any conflicts to declare? Councillor Pervin.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I will be declaring a conflict of interest in the item 5.2 as I'm a member of the Innisfail Turf Club.
Thank you, Councillor Pervin. Any further? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 7.2. One of the owners of the building, Mr Bill Dray, and I sit together on an RSL committee, and we also sit together on the Cassowary Coast Walls for All committee. I would also, further to that, Mr Mayor, declare a declarable conflict in item 9.1. Mr Greg Puddick, who is a close associate of mine, works for the company Mobile Carpet Cleaning Factory Proprietary Limited, so I will leave the room and not participate.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Any further conflicts to declare? I also have a conflict, and I will be leaving the room for item 5.2, page 93. My wife, Marsha, is president of the Innisfail Lioness Club, and they use the cultural centre for monthly meetings, and they store all their lioness equipment in there for their markets. She's a member of the Feast of the Senses Committee. They use the Innisfail Fishing Club for their monthly meetings and store all their equipment. And lions and lionesses are doing a transition in terms of their organisation, and currently lions attract some remuneration from the local school for the covered car parks, and in very short time, when lions fold, that role will be handed over to lionesses, so there's a financial gain in that regard. So based on the three conflicts that my wife has, I declare them, and I will leave the room for item 5.2. Over to the CEO.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. With your permission, I've received written advice from Councillors Pervin and Baines and from yourself, Mr Mayor, excuse me, in accordance with the requirements under the legislation.
Thank you, Mr Gott. We now move on to item 1, confirmation of the minutes, 1.1, page 3. Would somebody move that the minutes of the local government meeting held on the 10th of December 2020 are true and accurate record? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Chewy. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Any business arising from those minutes? Take that as a no. We move on to item 3, economic activation and tourism. Item 3.1, page 32, the Performance Car Festival, and this report will be presented by Ms Saffron.
Morning, Ms Saffron.
Morning.
Okay. Last year we were approached by the organisation Performance Cars Proprietary Limited.
It's on. The red light's on. Yeah, you're right.
Better? Okay. Last year we were approached by Performance Cars Proprietary Limited to hold, it's actually National Spring Car Nationals Proprietary Limited, to hold a festival in Innisfail for August. They basically gave us a time frame, so we are at the end of our time frame to identify whether or not we want to go ahead with that. The conditions are basically, they come in, they work with the identified site holders. They have conversation. They do all the work. All we need to do is give them the identified site, which was the Mundu Airdrome. After much toing and froing, we looked at Tully, we looked at Cardwell, we looked at where across the region we could possibly hold it, and we've gone back to the Innisfail Airport. So they'll come in and have the conversations with all users there. They then approach local not-for-profits and businesses for sponsorship. The not-for-profits have the ability to come in and raise funds. So, obviously they're going to need food and the like, so they would come in and they would be the food stall holders if that's what they intend doing, or there would be other options for them to get involved. They are able to host a street parade for us if that's what council decides at the end of the day that they would like to see happen through the main street of Innisfail with the cars. Part of the festival is a show and shine, so they have cars on display, and then of course they do the normal, I think it's drags and burnouts and the likes, which would be occurring at the airport. The event would run from Friday night through till Sunday, so they'd have an event on Friday night, Saturday night, and then Sunday would be the closure. And they what they're asking from council is $10,000 sponsorship, which can be paid after the event if that's what we choose. So in the next financial year, it doesn't necessarily have to be put up front. And support with things like traffic management plans, marquees, that infrastructure in kind support is what they're basically asking. They're saying they don't need us to go out and purchase anything, so they're not asking for the barriers and the likes. It's just basically what we have and what we could possibly give them for the operations of the event and making the event successful. They and so pretty much we're at the end of our deadline, and we're in the space where they are waiting with anticipation. I'm sure I'll get a phone call today. The event they've given us, they worked on the tourism calculations on what it will bring in. I actually went back and we use Economy ID, and I've done a check on their figures, and based on the numbers that they say they bring in, they are accurate, so that or they compare. So the total spend in the region would be 1.162 million. It would, it would give part-time work and casual work to locals. It has a community benefit in the sense that it brings our community together. It encourages local participation, and again, as I said, it gives opportunity for those not-for-profit organisations and businesses to promote. Our marketing would be obviously with any of those very niche events, they have their own media networks, they have magazines, they have networks that they then send out across the country to participants and for those who are interested in that type of sport. And so all of that would be, Cassowary Coast would be across all of that. We also are aware that we've got Red Bull that month and Targa, so we've actually given conditions in the sense that if we're going to hold this event, our consideration, we want them to consider the 4th or the 7th of August, because that will then give us back-to-back 3 major events back-to-back. There's also local festivals happening that month, so it's really a jam-packed month, and that would be the month that we would be promoting people to be in the Cassowary Coast, because there's going to be heaps to do. Well, obviously the partnership would, obviously council's logo would be across everything, and we'd have prominent signing. There'd be joint media releases done with the mayor and the group. We'd have and all accommodation would be promoted. So anyone who wants to put their hand up and say promote us in this space would be done through their media as well. And they then have asked that we manage overflow. So if they book out everything across the region, is there a possibility that we could set up a makeshift campsite? So that would possibly be, just on the top of my head, Peace Park, say you might have have something happening there. But they are very conscious that that doesn't happen until there's absolutely no accommodation left in the region. So they're across it all. And that's really it.
Councillors, any questions for Ms Saffron? Councillor Pervin.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a great benefit to the Cassowary Coast Regional Council if we can try and get this over the line. Just in terms of the visitor numbers to our region alone, tying it in with these other events within the month, the Red Bull Defiance and the Targa. I think after the success of those two events and to throw this one in there, I think it's a great opportunity that we should look towards.
Thanks, Councillor Pervin. Councillor Millwood.
So first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody back and welcome to the new year, those staff members and those watching on live stream. I'm also very excited to hear that we've secured such another major event and driver in the form of the Performance Car Festival, to be held in conjunction with the already successful Targa and Red Bull Defiance events. And I think bringing this to the Cassowary Coast would be awesome. And I think I personally welcome the AutoFest Performance Car Festival to be held, and well done to the team for the work that you've done to secure it.
Thanks, Councillor Millwood. And Councillor Farinelli.
Yes, welcome back, everyone. Yeah, what a fantastic opportunity. I love cars. I don't know if people know that about me, but I just love cars. I love fast cars too. So this is really exciting. And I think 2020 was the year known for COVID. I personally hope 2021 is the year that we see the Cassowary Coast realise its potential, full potential through incredible events. This being one of them. So I'm really in support of this. You know, we've got other events that are backing up to this with Targa, Red Bull, Defiance. So very exciting space for this region to be in. Great economic driver, tourism driver, and it tells everyone in Australia that the Cassowary Coast is open and is accepting these incredible events for its region and its people. And for that matter, I would like to move the recommendation if no one else has got anything else to say.
It's moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Pervin. Before we go to the vote, I'd just like to say that I have attended a function at Mundu some years ago, a car-related function, drags, and it was hugely popular. So wonderful to see it coming back to Mundu on the back of Red Bull and Targa. They say every man must have a shed, and I agree with that. And if you look in the shed these days, there's an old car. There's that many people that live in Cassowary Coast spending a fortune upgrading old cars. So this event is going to be extremely popular. So well done to Ms Saffron and the team for attracting this one. Councillor Barnes.
Mr. Mayor, I've been to one of these. They are such a great success. Just what's being moved.
Councillor, your button.
I'm out of practice. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've been to one of these and I do know the success they are, and I know this recommendation has been moved by Councillor Farinelli. But in .2, the $10,000, I know it's not in our budget. Could we say that that $10,000 gets paid, say, in July?
Over to the CEO.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, that'll be a matter for the 21-22 budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good point, Councillor Barnes. It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments, councillors? All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Saffron. We move on to item 4, Governance, Environment and Finance. 4.1, the Audit Committee report, and Ms Bradley will present this report.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Miss Bradley.
To add on to the excitement of the car festival, I have for you this morning the Audit Committee report. So, Council's Audit Committee meets quarterly each financial year to review matters relating to operational risks and control measures detailed in our internal audit plan. The meeting minutes contain a summary of the matters that have been discussed during those particular meetings. So the Audit Committee is comprised of 2 independent members and 2 councillors, which includes the Mayor. The role of the committee is to provide independent assurance and assistance to the CEO and Council on the risk control and compliance frameworks, Council's external accountability responsibilities, and any regulations or standards made thereunder. The committee is directly responsible and accountable to Council for the exercise of duties and responsibilities, including performance management, internal and external audit, compliance and reporting. So the minutes of the Audit Committee meeting provide Council with information on the relevant matters which have been reviewed and discussed by the Audit Committee. So today we've got 2 minutes to present. We've got our special meeting which was held on the 16th of October. The summary items that were discussed during that meeting was to present our QAO closing report for the 1920 financial year, including our unmodified audit opinion which has been presented to Council in November. In addition to that, we had our 1920 financial statements which was also presented to Council in November. The Audit Committee with unconfirmed minutes from the 3rd of December covered areas such as business arising from previous minutes which had all been resolved or provided for, our external audit, internal audit, asset management and enterprise risk management. I am happy to take any questions anyone might have on those minutes.
Councillors, any questions for Ms Bradley on that report? I'd just like to make a comment in relation to another unmodified audit report. I think that brings the total to about 10 now consecutively, and I acknowledge previous councils and the finance team for the wonderful work they've done. Currently we're debt-free and we have 10 unmodified audit reports. I think it says a lot about our governance. Thank you, Ms Bradley.
Thank you. I'll pass on the appreciation to the team.
No worries. Somebody move that report, please. Moved by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Councillor Farinelli. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 4.2, the finance report, and Ms Bradley will present this report.
So I have for you the finance report and the monthly council reporting package for the period up until the 31st of December 2020. So Council adopted our 2021 budget on the 7th of July and approved the first quarter budget review on the 12th of November, which is reflected in the reports attached. The report provides information and tracks Council's year-to-date revenue expenditure across all departments, programs and services, and financial statistical data as well is included in the reports. The second quarter budget review is well underway currently, where we review in detail the operational and capital budget across all departments and programs, so that will come to Council in the future for review. Some of the key highlights from the December report: our operational revenues currently sitting at $47.9 million, which is $533,000 over budget. Our operational expenditure sitting at $47.1 million, which is $1.9 million under budget. Our end-of-month cash balance was sitting at $32.2 million, and capital expenditure for the month was $4.7 million, and year-to-date capital expenditure, including commitments, totaled $31.8 million, which is 36% in comparison to our full-year budget, excluding commitments, and 47% including commitments. On the second page, we have our measures of financial sustainability, with our operating surplus ratio sitting comfortably at 1.84%, our asset sustainability ratio also sitting within target range of 117%, and our net financial liabilities ratio at minus 49.57%, also within targeted range. The next page gives us a summary of our financial results with a few key items to note. Fees and charges are currently tracking over budget by $163,000 due to an increase in rate searches, increased building inspections and increased animal registration fees recovered. Interest on investments, as we've been speaking about all year, is tracking under budget currently by $238,000 due to lower than anticipated interest rates, and Council will continue to monitor this budget risk closely and maximise investments where possible. Operating grants is currently tracking $315,000 over budget due to Works for Queensland funding received in relation to projects completed in the prior financial year and receipt of a second payment of the Coastal Adaptation Strategic Plan. Sales and recoverable works is currently over budget by $414,000 due to the receipt of Main Roads contract works, and the budget will be rephased in the next review. Employee expenses is currently under budget by $1.04 million due to vacant positions held. Materials and services, currently tracking under budget by $755,000, relating to the timing of invoices, particularly for transfer stations, electricity and communications, as well as reduced fuel costs for council. Capital grants is currently tracking over budget by almost $4.3 million due to NDRRA funding received for prior year works and the receipt of the LRCI funding. Capital contributions is also over budget due to increased developer contributions received. And then we have our gain on asset disposal, which is currently over budget with no budget in there, for proceeds of sales from fleet items, which is offset by loss on disposal, currently tracking under budget due to the timing of completion of capital works and capitalisation projects. So this will increase as capital renewals are processed through the capitalisation process. The next page, you'll have to disregard the top table, apologies for that on your report, that says investment performance as at the 27th of November. We had a technical issue with the software, so that's last month's. Underneath that though, we've got our investment performance as at 31st of December, with cash on call at 17.1 million, with an interest rate range of 0.6%, fixed term deposits of 15 million at 0.8%, and QTC on call at 0.91%. Underneath that is our capital projects for the month ending December. Capital budget including carryovers currently sitting at 58.9, with capital expenditure at 21 million, year-to-date commitments at 10.7 million, so we're sitting at 35.65%. So management identify and monitor budget risks that have potential to impact council's financial result. Some of the budget risks that are being reviewed in more detail as part of the budget review, but the ones that we've addressed so far or are dealing with is our asset rationalisation, as you're all aware, interest on investments, which is partially offset by interest on outstanding rates, our work cover insurance premium by $60,000, Port Hinchinbrook dredging study, and the waste transfers project. So as I mentioned, during the second quarter budget review, we will be identifying, or we have been identifying, other budget risks, positive and negative, to mitigate some of those risks that we'll discuss with EMT and councillors in due course.
Thank you, Ms Bradley. Any questions for the officer on that report? If not, would somebody move that the report be received and noted? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Baines. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Bradley.
Thank you all.
It was as exciting as cars.
Excellent.
We move on to item 4.3, page 64, policy review, and this report will be presented by Ms Slattery. Welcome.
Good, thank you. Good morning, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors.
Ms Slattery.
Good morning. Okay, so policy reviews. In your pack today you've got two policies for your consideration. The first policy is a new policy for this council. It's the guideline for the provision of councillor administration support. So this new guideline clarifies when and how councillors can direct councillor administration support staff, and it's a requirement as part of the new Local Government Act legislation updated as the 12th of October. So yeah, we've been through that as a group. So that's a new policy. The next policy is one that's been reviewed and updated. It is the provision of legal assistance for employees and councillors. This policy has been updated to reflect our insurance policy amendments, and in particular in relation to the repayment of claims in certain circumstances. Now in the draft, we've got the track changes in your report. I just want to bring your attention to one section. There's just a minor amendment that I would like to have acknowledged, and that's just part of clause 6, part C, the last sentence. So the last sentence says, set out below in clause 6 of this policy are examples which are provide further guidance in this regard. I want to delete that. There's no intention to provide examples at all. It's just an oversight in our drafting. So I just want to have that sentence removed in the draft policy. So are there any questions in relation to those policies at all?
Councillors, any questions for the officer on that report?
Okay,
if not, would somebody move that recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 4.4, Councillor Remuneration 2021-22. Ms Slattery.
Okay. So late last year, the Local Government Remuneration Commission concluded its determination of the levels of remuneration for the mayors, deputy mayors and councillors of local governments as required under the Local Government Act. The Commission decided not to increase the maximum remuneration levels for those mayors, deputy mayors and councillors from the 1st of July 2021. The recommendation is to reflect that decision. So the recommendation is that Council resolve to adopt the recommendation of the Local Government Remuneration Commission to not increase the maximum remuneration levels for mayors, deputy mayors and councillors from the 1st of July 2021, with the levels to remain the same as the 2020-2021 for the Cassowary Coast Regional Council.
Councillors, any questions for Ms Slattery? Moved by Councillor. Yep, CEO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just to remove any doubt, this council has previously decided not to accept the maximum payment available, so the recommendation therefore is that the council remuneration stays as it has been. So you're still below the maximum.
Thanks, Mr Grott. Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Morwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Slattery. We now move on to item 5, Asset Sustainability, 5.1, page 80, Capital Report, and this will be presented by Mr Fisher.
Morning, Mr Fisher.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Mr Fisher.
Morning, councillors. Councillors, this is the Capital Report as of December, and shows us about 51% through the capital program. As many of you would know, since December we've had a lovely Christmas break and then a whole lot of rain. So it's unfortunate to report we haven't made much inroads into the program beyond this report. So I guess next month's report will reflect that. As we look to, achieve the best result in the conditions we can, our focus will really, take into account that wet weather and the funded projects, which are detailed in the report, where we've got those funding deadlines, a lot of them of which sit at June 2021. So the capital delivery team will be putting a real focus on how we can achieve that with the wet season that we have been experiencing and forecast. So happy to take any questions through the chair about any specific projects.
Thank you, Mr Fish. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Fisher, I know I don't have to emphasise the importance of time on these external funding projects stated on page 83. We, as a council, I think collectively we really support you in as many ways as we can, and as you go down that list you'll see that a lot of these finish in June 2021. Now, we're prepared to give you all the help you can because we don't wish to be giving any money back, trust me. So, one way or another, I hope now that you're sharpening the pencil and getting the tools sharp, because when it dries up, we're going to hit the ground running. A lot of these I see are just about finished in my eyes, but you can speak better on them, I suppose.
Yes, sure. Through the chair, yes, there are a number there that sit quite towards the end of that program. You're exactly right. And as I said, the team are really going to review that, I guess, in terms of how we might be able to deliver. We're really looking at our internal capability and capacity. As we all know, when we get these events, our day labour teams are shifted into that disaster response phase, which pretty much takes capital works off the agenda for a period of time. And with that in mind, especially, like I said, for those funded projects, just have to look at alternative means. It's also worth noting that our local contractors a lot of them are reasonably busy at the moment, but we do know there is some capacity still within the local contracting fraternity. So we'll just have to work out how we can deliver with using those contractors, and we are looking at some smaller works packages to enable those smaller contractors to be competitive in delivering. So.
Thank you, Mr Fisher. Any further questions for the officer? Councillor Purvin.
Mr. Fisher, just a couple of items there in the report. The River Drive Caravan Park is 75% complete. Will there continue to be cleaning up of vegetation taking place along the riverbank and the road frontage? It needs a good clean up.
Yep.
Also, will we have new signage installed there?
Most definitely. Through the chair, yes, it is still in need of that clean up, and we've got assistance from Work Camp coming in that regard. We really want to give it a good haircut. And yes, that signage will be replaced. It speaks of a day that is no longer around, and we really want to have fresh, vibrant entrance and appearance to that park, particularly from the highway. It's such a great facility, and want to make it open and as clean and tidy as possible to make it sure it's inviting to tourists. So,
Councillor Millwood.
On that note, Mr. Fisher, caravan parks, how's the Great Greenway facing up in Tully, and when should we think we should see a start?
Sure. Through the chair, the Greenway Caravan Park, obviously the amenities block is a key part of opening up that project, and the tenders, for that closed Monday. So we've now got those submissions in and have made a recommendation based on those tenders to the Director of Infrastructure Services, and because it was a fairly straightforward decision, we are going to proceed with placing that order this week. That should have the facility available by early April, we hope. Obviously, again, weather permitting is a big thing. We've got to put services in there for the sites, drainage, electrical, and sewerage, and obviously we need some reasonable weather to do that. Both of those caravan parks will be advertising shortly for caretaker positions as well, so that we have those, we'll hopefully have those people appointed and ready for a mid-March opening in River Drive and a early April opening in Tully, because of that time frame with the amenities block. So,
through the chair, could you just advise people where that would be advertised for the positions of the caretaker, where they can find that?
Sure, that'll be through the LG tender box, and we'll no doubt do something locally with our media team just to direct people through that tender box link so they can find the information.
Councillor Pervin.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Fisher, for that. Just a couple more questions I've got to ask. The bouldering and slack line, that's 50% complete. When will that be completed, and whereabouts is it to be located exactly?
Sure. So we now have that, equipment, if that items sitting in the Innisfail depot. So if people are driving past, you can get a glimpse of what it will look like. It will be located down near the skate park, between the toilet block and the skate park there. We have to shift a pole with some CCTV on it, but that's planned for. Timing, we're just waiting to come up with that final delivery plan, because the contractor who was employed to do this is Victorian, and we're just working through that arrangement with him, whether he can get up to finish the work. There needs to be the soft fall placed before that item in, or whether we actually just remove that item from his contract and deliver it locally. So we're just negotiating that. So I'd expect within the next month or two that should be available. But if you want a glimpse of it, you can sneak a peek through the depot first.
Yeah, I've had a look. Councillor Baines gave us a bit of a sneak preview the other day on some photos. So yeah, it looks good. Be good to see it up and going. Just before you go, Justin, I've got one more, probably more directed to Byron from the Planning Department. The waystanding strategy. The design's being completed. When can we expect these to be installed? We've seen some proof of what they look like, and is there any chance? I've got a few people in the public asking, when are the new signs going to be erected in Innisfail, Cardwell, Mission Beach?
I'll let Byron come and answer that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Fisher.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Through the chair, Councillor Pervin, we've had obviously some setbacks with that project due to COVID, with the consultant being based down south, the contractor. However, I've just got told in the last week or so they've welded up started welding up the frames to the panels. So I think at this stage we're expecting around about April.
Thanks very much for that, Byron. Thank you.
No worries, thank you.
Mr. Jones, while you're on the hot seat, Innisfail Bowls Club, QRA funded, looks great. Mega Construction appear to be doing a great job. Are you happy with the time frame? Are we going to meet the funding deadline?
Through the chair, thank you, Mayor Nolan. Yeah, at the moment we're looking pretty good for that time frame. We've obviously had a little bit of wet weather. However, they were able to get all the blocks in place before that actually came. So that was a great effort by our contractor and our team to ensure that was done prior to Christmas, knowing that we had a wet season coming after that. We're still on track to meet that deadline of June. I expect that to be done around about March as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Jones? If not, somebody move the recommendation, please. Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thanks, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
We now move on to item 5.2, asset rationalisation process, page 93. As indicated, I'll leave the room and Deputy Mayor will take the chair.
Yeah, I'll be
Councillor
leaving
Baines.
too as well.
I'll leave the room as well, Mr. Mayor.
You're not going this one, Jeffrey.
I've jumped in front.
Yeah.
With
Excuse me, councillors.
with your permission, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'll just call Council's consultant so that she can be privy to the discussion and make any contributions which Council might require. Shouldn't take me a moment, I hope.
Thank you, everybody. I'd just like it noted that Councillor Mark Nolan and Councillor Pervin have left the meeting due to a conflict of interest. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Catino for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have in front of you the asset rationalisation report. So as we're all aware that the asset rationalisation has been on Council's radar since 2015 when the Queensland Treasury Corporation reported that Council's increasing asset base is placing a significant financial burden on the community. Over the past 12 months, a lot of work has occurred to get us to a point where we are able to recommend a list of assets for consideration to rationalise. In this last 2 months, Council has engaged with the community via the Community Consultative Group, and we have had direct engagement with users, clubs and groups that have been identified as using the assets some of the assets being considered today. We have Michelle Feenan on the line, who was engaged as a facilitator of the Community Consultative Group for this project. Michelle, with her vast experience and knowledge in community engagement, assisted us in being able to complete this project in such a tight time frame. So I'd like to hand over to Michelle now to just to give a bit of a few words about the process.
Thank you very much, Chris, and good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute. The process that was established is an important one, as the main thing that we were striving to achieve was to, wherever possible and however possible, to provide some objective inputs for the project or on the project for the councillors' information and consideration. And so we set about using some of the criteria that were established by the project team in there, as well as councillors' early assessment of the possible assets that could be considered for rationalisation in this process. So we led the consultative group on a process that was very similar to what the project team and council had done in some respects already. So we used the 8 set of criteria, and we referred to this as a multi-criteria assessment. The consultative group were provided with all of the information that was available about each of these assets, and that was in formats that included aerial photographs, photographs of the assets themselves, locational maps, descriptions of the history and context of the asset, as well as some considerations on what might be possible for rationalisation if that was an outcome by council's decision. So that information was available to each of the consultative group, and over the 3 sessions that we organised for the group to meet, to receive that information, but also importantly to understand the process that they were embarking upon and also their own particular role. We gave the group as much information that was available at the time, and it should be noted that there was a parallel process at play where other members of the project team were engaging directly with user groups from across the Cassowary Coast region with respect to their use of assets. And that survey material and discussions with the groups also enabled some updates or further inputs to the considerations by the consultative group, the community consultative group. Now, the group met over those 3 occasions. They considered the material that was available. They had available to them also the members of the project team as well as councillors to assist to provide information with respect to the assets. So the project team were able to give clarifications about terminology, about the specific assets, about what might be the different types of rationalisation that could be pursued, and to always, I guess, come back to emphasising the point that this process was about looking at ways in which to honour the commitment that council was making, but in a way to also honour ratepayers and their and the burden of ratepayers and their contributions to the rate paying process. So the objective was about looking at ways in which the rate base could be reduced over a period of time. So the consultative group very much embraced that. They spoke very strongly about the need. They understood what the main objective was, and at times, while they kind of got a little bit confused about what might be possible rationalisation, it was the presence of the project team and the re-emphasising of the different options at play and the clarification about different aspects of the assets that helped the consultative group be able to go through their deliberations. Now, the group worked in their final scoring as individuals. We provided them with scribing sheets or activity sheets that listed out each of the assets, each of the 8 criteria that was used as part of the multi-criteria assessment. And the other aspect of the assessment is that we asked them to consider, on the basis of all the information that was available, where would they rate this particular asset in going forward? And we asked them to consider a 3-flag system. A green flag meant that they fully supported that asset going forward to be considered for rationalisation. An amber light was that they supported the idea, but they did have some questions and some minimal concerns. And then the 3rd flag was the red flag, and that was where they did not fully support this particular asset going forward for consideration of rationalisation. So the process involved, just to recap, those different elements of assessment. It involved the provision of as much information that was available by the project team throughout those 3 sessions, and an opportunity to provide or to seek clarification and discuss with their colleagues as they did so. And the results from their scribing sheets were then collated and provided to the project team for consideration and for their final reporting. So that gives you a summary of the process that was that we undertook with the community consultative group.
Yes, thank you very much for such a detailed report. Excuse me, Councillor Millwood, I'll just ask Mr. Katina, have you got more to add to that?
Yes, please. So along with this feedback from the user groups and the consultative group, we did, along with background research and council staff input, we have collated, which ensures that the assets that we are recommending do meet the criteria for rationalisation. For each asset in the list that has been provided in front of you, recommended rationalisation approach has been provided in the appendix of the report. This shows that not all the assets that we've got on the list result in the removal of assets. It can be about ensuring that only the users pay for the expenses and not by all ratepayers. So the next steps, if council does support the recommendation today, we will move into the implementation phase. So this will see council working in consultation with the user groups affected to implement the recommended approach, and this is going to be in line with the following principles. Council will remain focused on delivering outcomes that benefit the whole community. Council is committed to reducing depreciation, insurance premiums and other operational costs. Council encourages assets to be shared amongst multiple users to increase utilisation rates. Council is committed to work with users to minimise the impacts where possible, albeit the way that they use council infrastructure may change, and we will follow up on affected users after implementation is complete to maintain council support. So Councillor Farinelli has provided a great lot of support to this process and leadership in this project. So I'd like to hand over to her, through the chair, if you don't mind, to add some comments.
Good, thank you. Councillor Farinelli.
Through the Deputy Mayor. Yes, this has been I actually really enjoyed this whole process, to be honest with you. Something I really was keen to sink my teeth into from day one being elected. At first, there was a little bit of pushback I felt from the community consultative group. They felt that council was essentially trying to palm off some of the responsibility onto them rather than us accepting this will be our decision that we're making. And I hope, and I'm pretty sure I alleviated a lot of their concerns, because in the second session, there was, a few people were saying to me, we didn't know whether we could continue in this area. But I hope that, and I do believe that by explaining to them what this really means, what asset rationalisation means, and it's not about bulldozing, it's not about knocking things down. To me, how I approach this is about building stronger and more sustainable community groups. Groups that were through this whole process were basically required to look it within and look at how they've been running their groups previously, and how they could probably run them better. About having multi-use facilities, because, at the end of the day, multiple use facilities are actually the facilities, and the groups are looked at more favourably when it comes to funding opportunities through grants. So this has really been, to me, I see this as, this is stage one. Today is stage one. There is a stage two to follow. We need to be proud of what we've been able to achieve through the assistance of our staff, and also the contribution of these community members who've given up their time with their families and friends and to be there to help guide us through this. But ultimately, this is a council decision. I appreciate the support of our staff. I appreciate the input from the members of the community consultative group, and I'm really proud of what we've been able to put forward here today. This is just part one, and there will be more, and the winners of this will be the residents and everybody within the Cassowary Coast, and we will be realising this incredible opportunity to hopefully take pressure off future rate rises.
Thank you. Well said, Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair, I also would like to recognise the efforts put in by Councillor Farinelli, and also Mr Goodman to the success of the asset rationalisation process. Kylie and Mr Goodman worked very hard alongside the Cassowary Coast Community Consultative Group to provide Council with some very valuable input towards the decisions that we will make. And with Kylie and Dave's expertise in this area, along with the input from the Community Consultation Group, I'm pretty thankful that our decisions will be valuable to the community, and I thank them for their time and efforts.
Good, thank you. Before we move this motion, is there anyone else? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I too would like to pass my congratulations on to everyone involved in this process, but I would also like to acknowledge that I believe this process is asset rationalisation 2.0. We've taken it to a new level. Mr Singh first broached this with Council 5 years ago, and the previous Council also stepped into the realm and have been doing some asset rationalisation. The 2.0 at the moment, with the efforts of the Community Consultative Group, Kylie's great support, the support of all councillors and the staff, is just seeing this step to another level, and we're going to see great results for our entire community and the organisation as a whole. One of the particular items that I've had a lot of dealings with is the pathway at Dalrymple Esplanade. It's a hard path that sits as an asset, as a rationalisation piece, and probably a good example is we're taking a hard asset out, but we're going to replace it with a soft asset that removes it or lessens the depreciation or removes it off our list, I believe. So, and still a great utilisation piece for community. Some community members are a bit concerned that it's not concrete, but we don't need concrete running around the place everywhere. Having a good facility to use, but in the future, that'll help us keep our depreciation levels lower. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Well said. Councillor Kylie.
Thank you to Councillor Millwood and to Councillor Baines, and I concur too with what Councillor Baines has said. This is asset rationalisation 2.0. This is asset rationalisation taking the community with us on these decisions, and for that I would like to move the recommendation.
Right, do we have a seconder? Councillor Millwood. All those in favour? Okay, motion unanimous. Thank you. We'll now ask for Councillor Nolan and Councillor Purban to re-enter the room.
Ms Feenan, thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you very much, and good morning, councillors. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Echo.
Welcome back, Mr Mayor. I can advise you that the council is present for the resolution voted unanimously in favour of the recommendations in the asset rationalisation process report.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Okay, we move on to item 6, major projects. Item 6.1, the Port Hinchinbrook sewerage proposal, and Mr Bradford will present this report.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and good morning, councillors.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr Bradford.
Council's in receipt of a funding proposal from the Department of State Development, Tourism and Innovation for the construction of a new sewage treatment plant within the Port Hinchinbrook estate. The proposal is as follows. The department will provide $4.3 million towards a new sewage treatment plant for the Port Hinchinbrook estate. Council will fund the balance of approximately $2 million to the new STP. The proposal will also see that Council would acquire the STP land and existing STP assets, and also the road land and associated subterranean infrastructure. And once that's acquired, Council would then dedicate that to a road reserve under the Land Act. The proposal is very generous from the department, and council officers thank the department for all their hard work in getting that to us. The proposal will see council take full control and ownership of the sewage within the Port Hinchinbrook estate, and also responsibility for the road land from the company, which is currently the Passage Holdings in liquidation. The new sewage treatment plant is for a 500 person equivalent person sewage plant, which does meet the current demand of around 200 equivalent persons. Officers are comfortable that the STP is sized appropriately to meet the current demand, but do have some concerns about managing the capital outlay going forward as the population of Port Hinchinbrook increases potentially over the next 5 to 10 years towards its capacity under the current conform deed, which is 1,500 equivalent persons. The road infrastructure within the estate, there's about 6 kilometres of sealed roads. Council would acquire this and associated subterranean assets such as the water, the sewage, and also the stormwater assets. There are small sections of road that do need rehabilitation, and there's also some work on the culverts and the bridges within the estate as well. The current state of the subterranean assets for particularly stormwater and water is unknown at this point, as condition assessments have not been able to be taken out on those assets. There is some concern, particularly with the water assets, the water network, that they may have been bundled into the same trenches with other internal services within the estate. The current STP, Council's been operating that in an agreement with the state, Department of State Development, with approval from the liquidator. The current plant is in very poor condition and does continue to require minor works to keep it operating. The current plant is likely not meeting current environmental compliance requirements under the Environmental Authority. As mentioned, the proposal is for the sewage treatment plant only. Council has identified that there is other works that do need to be completed within the sewage reticulation network that would need to be done as a part of this project if Council took it on. These works include replacement of pump stations, a couple of the pump stations, new pumps, guide rails and chains at all pump stations, switchboard upgrades, also new floats and sensors, and there's some replacements needed for some of the risers and valves and the pump stations as well. Council estimates this will be at $2.3 million of extra funding that would need to be sourced to fund those works. Some conditions assessments have been undertaken on the gravity sewage network and are found to be in pretty fair condition for their age. However, no condition assessments have been undertaken on any of the pressure mains. It's understood that the polyethylene pipes are actually a lower class than what Council normally accepts throughout its other sewage schemes within the region. Part of this process, Council undertook a community survey with the property owners in particular, but it was also offered for the wider community to contribute as well. So Council received 85 surveys during the period, but also received around a dozen letters that were directly sent to Council and councillors and staff. 47 of the survey respondents and the majority of the letters indicated they were property owners. If we just focus on those respondents, half were very clear that Council is in the best position to take on the sewage treatment at Port Hinchinbrook. However, felt the rates proposed were too high and should be on par with the other sewage schemes within the region. There was support for Council to source funding for the capital contribution towards the project, and 3 of the respondents actually did indicate that were property owners, did indicate that the body corporate should remain in control of the sewage. It was obvious from a number of the responses that a number are quite desperate for a solution, but we're not sure how they could afford it, what was being proposed. It is when in doing this survey, it was important to balance that against what the wider community thoughts were. The 38 non-Port Hinchinbrook property owners that completed the survey had some quite mixed opinions on who should operate the STP. However, there was significant clarity from from nearly all those respondents that it should be a self-funded model and not burden the general ratepayer. On the rates burden, the proposed utility charge that would attract this if council took it on is $3,000 per year. And if the capital contribution is not sourced externally and is funded by those ratepayers within the Port Hinchinbrook estate, this would see another $1,500 per year for 10 years. It should be noted that any additional funding that's sourced by council for this project would actually reduce that $1,500 per year for those property owners within the defined benefit area. Sewage utility charge is a charge under the Local Government Act, and it's the cost associated with providing and maintaining a sewage treatment and associated reticulation network. So that cost cannot be levied as a part of general rates. As part of any decision in consideration, there should be consideration for not proceeding and what that might look like. Council is under no obligation to take on the sewage treatment at Port Hinchinbrook. The development's a private estate and governed by the conform deed. The conform deed clearly outlines that the company is responsible for sewage treatment within the estate, which is the Passage Holdings Proprietary Limited in liquidation. In its current form, Port Hinchinbrook's not offering a huge amount for the region from an economic perspective. Long-term security of sewage on its own is not going to change that immediately. However, it would resolve a roadblock that may be slowing any major investment in that estate. It is probably worth noting a vibrant Port Hinchinbrook would add value to the Cassowary Coast region. Some of the legal implications of this that council should consider. So the current conform deed is between 4 parties, so the council, the state government, the Commonwealth, and also the company, the Passage Holdings. If council move forward with this proposal, it would see that the protection under the conform deed, particularly in relation to sewage, could be lost. Also, there's further potential onerous approvals may be required with council taking on the sewage treatment within the proposed development, particularly in relation to its proximity to the Great Barrier Reef. We're not sure what these costs may be at this point. Some of the other risks associated with this project is the potential lack of capacity to pay from a number of the property owners. This was reflected in the survey results as well. The environmental compliance issues, the current plant is may not be actually meeting the current environmental compliance requirements under the Environmental Authority. Us taking it on may need those addressed quite quickly. The council would still need to source appropriate land in the local vicinity for the disposal of the treated effluent. The current land available is not sufficient to cover a 500 EP plant. While it is enough land currently to meet the 200 EP demand that's currently coming through the plant, if that increases, additional land would need to be sought. There is some risk around the additional capital outlays and operational outlays associated with the additional assets council will be picking up. Some of those are undefined at this point. If council resolves to not proceed, some of the risks associated with this is the lack of ongoing appropriate management of sewage treatment within the estate and its residents, and this in turn also sees a risk to the wider environment such as the Great Barrier Reef. The financial implications to council is $4.3 million, $2 million to fund the balance of this project, of this proposal, but also the $2.3 million for the additional capital works towards the sewage reticulation network. Council would source the $4.3 million through a special charge to the defined benefit ratepayers, which would be the $1,500 per year for 10 years, if additional external funding was not sought. The ongoing management of sewage treatment within the estate from council's perspective is estimated to be $737,000 per year. This will be funded through the utility charge, which council estimates would be around $3,000 per year. To put that in perspective, Innisfail's sewage utility charge is currently rated as one of the dearest in the state, and this charge is around 3 times that. There's other unknowns around some of the capital works that need to be done to some of the other assets, such as the roads and stormwater, and also the water mains as well. The water mains in particular would have no accumulated depreciation, so any works there would need to be funded. If they weren't to be funded, wouldn't have depreciation available to fund that. The additional operational costs going forward would see around $125,000 a year in depreciation just from stormwater, roads, curb and channelling and major drainage structures. And the increase to the overall operational expenditure could be expected to be around 0.5% of general rates. So the recommendation for Council today is to acknowledge the feedback from the property owners and the concerned members of the community from the recent completed community engagement survey, and also to consider the proposal from the Department of State Development, Tourism and Innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Councillor Farinelli.
First, through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question. So, in the last few years, we've been receiving money from the state, $100,000 a year or something, to actually run the sewage treatment plant for Carwell. Is it true that that money actually ran out 12 months ago, so we've actually been running the sewage treatment plant, Council's been running it without getting any income from the state for the past 12 months?
Not 12 months, but it's been a few months, yes.
Yeah, and
I
yet
think August.
Okay, and yet they don't actually get levied any sewerage charge whatsoever. So
not at the moment.
We've been funding it, but they're not actually paying for their sewage, right? So going by your report, there are 3 levels of government in this conform deed. State and federal, in my opinion, have a much larger revenue stream than we have. They deal with billions of dollars in their budgets. We don't. We have a limited ratepayer base, and some of the highest rates is people are always saying, due to a backlog of assets. Now, in the previous report, we've just approved asset rationalisation of some community facilities, facilities that have been occupied and, looked after from some of our community groups for decades. People that are very passionate, and yet we've sat down with them, and our team have sat down with them and worked with them, and essentially we're looking for an outcome through asset sustainability that's going to see a benefit to the whole region. So why would my feeling of this is why would we dispose of assets after extensive community consultation only to take on dilapidated assets that are part of a private development? I personally see that as not in the best interest of the region as a whole and its people, and therefore I will be refusing the state government's offer.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. Councillor Purvin.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The state government's come forward with a very kind of funding offer for $4.3 million, but the overall cost to be incurred by council to complete the capital costs would be a lot more than this. On top of that, there is a lot of uncertainty to what other costs would be involved to complete capital works in the estate, in the Port Hinchinbrook estate, that the Queensland government wants the council to take on by accepting the funding. In saying so, we need to amend the conform deed to do this, and that was set up by the previous Cardwell Shire Council. This would open Pandora's box and expose us greatly to other unforeseen costs in the future laying ahead of us. I too will not be voting for this.
Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair. So just a couple of questions first. So when we did the survey, what was the majority of the property owners' opinion on paying the money?
The general consensus from the property owners was that the rates were exorbitant. They could certainly see benefit in council taking on the sewage, but the $3,000 per year they were not happy with. There was a number of suggestions from the property owners that it should just be in line with the other sewage schemes within the region. Okay, so on that note, correct me if I'm wrong, but each sewage plant that we've got in our region pays for itself. So the residents of Innisfail that are connected to Innisfail sewage pay for that,
The ones that are connected to Tully pay for theirs. The one at Mission Beach pays for theirs. So therefore this would be no different. So the people at Port Hinchinbrook would therefore be up for the costs of their sewage treatment plant without the rest of the ratepayers in the region being subjected to supporting or having to put into money into this.
Through the chair, that is the current policy that council's voted on previously, is that the sewage schemes are self-funded, and that is what was proposed by the officers with that in mind.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Barnes.
Good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Bradford on a very comprehensive report, and we'll go through a bit of a history lesson here now. The conformed deed, which the Cardwell Council set up way back, it's a very strong deed, and that it was there to protect the landowners. I've got something here. That's okay. When Mission Beach sewage plant was done, it's very, very similar to this in certain ways. They gave 50% of the money, and that was a Tip Burns mayor-led council, and they went hammer and tongs and eventually came home with all the money, and well, the rest is history. That's a very successful system. I think this sewage plant is so important for the residents of not only Port Hinchinbrook but for the whole Shire and the region, and much discussion which has taken place with the councillors, office staff, and even with great legal advice which we've acquired. And I note that the conformed deed, which was installed to protect the best interest of the council and all of our regional residents, was, once again, I'll say it again, was executed by 4 parties, namely the Commonwealth, the state, the council, and all the individual landholders in the area of Port Hinchinbrook. So I move, therefore, that the council rejects the state's offer on the basis that it could only weaken and diminish the weight and value of the conformed deed, and that the state have requested and to provide a palatable offer in the alternative, meaning, in short, that we're chasing more money. The council doesn't want to really walk away from this, but show us the money. And secondly, I'd like to acknowledge the feedback from the property owners and concerned members of the community from the recently completed community engagement survey. Would you like that, Mr. CEO? Thank you.
So, Councillor Barnes, you're moving that?
Certainly am, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Farinelli, you second that? Councillors, are there any further discussion on the matter? Okay, Councillor Barnes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, again, it's a very generous offer from the state coming forward, and we do appreciate that. It goes nowhere near covering what we know is in place, aside from also covering the unknowns that are sitting under the ground. The works done here were, what's that now, 20 years ago, Barry? 25 years ago? And I share the same concerns as Councillor Pervin. If we start playing around with this conformed deed, I do, without the agreement of all parties, I do believe it could place council in positions of risk and our ratepayers. So,
thank you, Councillor.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. It's already been seconded by Councillor Farinelli. I just want to say that we had a lot of discussion around this issue, and the compelling piece of evidence came from P&E Law, who actually drafted the conformed deed, and their advice was very strongly that we should reject, and I'll leave it at that. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I tell him he's going? No.
Excuse me, Mr. Goodman. Would you be so kind as to sit in my place for about 10 minutes?
Yep. Okay, we now move on to item 7, Planning Regional Development. Item 7.1, page 171, Delegation Report, and Mr. Jones will present this report.
Good morning again, everybody.
Morning. Again.
Council, I'm presenting the delegations report and current applications for December 2020. Overall, we're tracking well. Once again, Christmas in the wet season is going to see a slowdown in next month's figures, which we happen to see every year. But total approvals are still up on last year, which is good to see. There's good performance in the COVID environment. A lot of people are taking advantage of those grants, and all the builders that we're speaking to at the moment are flat out. So it's actually been a really good year for us, and hopefully that builds through into the future, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the officer councillors? If not, would somebody move the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millward. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.2, page 199, development permit for material change of use. Mr Jones.
Mr Chair?
Yep.
I have already quoted a conflict of interest in this one. I'll leave the room.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Over to you, Mr Jones.
Thank you. Before we start, Councillor, just to highlight, there's a typo on condition 4, which is on page 203. Condition 4 should actually read, the subject approval is limited to an enrolment number of 25 students, not 125. So I'd just like to highlight that and for your consideration. Council is in receipt of an application for material change of use for an educational establishment, being an intensification of existing use for up to 25 students. The application was prepared by Delinga on land described as Lot 2 RP 709042, situated at 89 Million Road, East Innisfail. The proposed development facilitates the intensification of the existing educational establishment, being for the Delinga Forest School, for the future growth of the school beyond 2021. The expansion will allow the school to increase the number of students on the site allowed under current approval from 8 to 25 students. The proposed development will utilise the existing building, access points and parking on the site. The development application was impact accessible and 0 submissions were received. The application did not trigger referral to the state government. The site is located within the urban footprint and appropriately zoned for the type of development proposed. Council, the recommendation in front of you for approval subject to reasonable and relevant conditions. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillors, any questions for Mr Jones? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millward. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to item 7.3. 7.3, development application, material change of use for aviation facility. And this will be presented by Mr Jones. Yeah, wait for Councillor Baines to come back in, mate. Yeah. Over to you, Mr Jones.
Thank you. Council is in receipt of an application which proposes to establish air services, being an aviation facility on land described as Lot 3, RP 732964, situated at 2224 Tully Mission Beach Road, Mission Beach. The proposed development will comprise a single-storey building, parking spaces, an external helicopter landing pad and a fuel storage area. The proposed development will be located on a portion of the subject site which has been cleared of vegetation as a result of previous agricultural activities. The front of the building and parking areas will be landscaped with the balance of the subject site being grass. The development proposes to connect to Council's water infrastructure on the Tully Mission Beach Road and proposes to install an appropriate wastewater treatment facility. The development also proposes to connect to the mains electricity and telecommunications via the existing infrastructure from Tully Mission Beach Road. The existing vehicle access point from the Tully Mission Beach Road is proposed to be upgraded to service the development. The proposed aviation facility will provide a base for helicopter passenger transfers, operations, inclusive of island connections from the region's major airports, being Cairns and Townsville. Associated uses including medical transfers, aerial firefighting and search and rescue operations and other emergency activities will also be undertaken from the site on an as-needs basis. The applicant has confirmed that the majority of helicopters proposed to be stationed at this aviation facility are not proposed to be used for joy flights. There is a direct linkage between the specialist nature of these helicopters and the high cost of operation. The number of movements will generally be lower than I would expect from a tourism joy flight operation. The original development application material stated that the type of helicopters proposed are highly specialised multi-role helicopters and provide a range of services including aerial firefighting, heavy lift and aerial crane and reconnaissance missions. However, Council officers sought additional clarification on this issue, and as a result of community concerns, the applicant has noted that his parent company, Kestrel Aviation, operate the Ericsson Air Crane Sikorsky Black Hawk helicopters as part of its aerial firefighting fleet in conjunction with US-based partners. However, it is not intended to have these stationed at Mission Beach as part of the Mission Beach helicopter operations. These helicopters, when not engaged under specific firefighter contracts, are generally stationed overseas to participate in the Northern Hemisphere fire seasons. The type of helicopters primarily proposed to be stationed at Mission Beach will be the Bell 206L3 Long Ranger and Sikorsky S-76 units. Other types of helicopters may be brought in to assist at times of natural disasters or for a specific purpose. However, this has been conditioned by Council to be subject to written permission. The subject site is an area of 11.16 hectares with frontage of approximately 870 metres to Tully Mission Beach Road. The site is located within the rural zone and has an existing bulk landscape supplies business, which has been operating from the site for many years and is proposed to continue to operate. To the north, the site adjoins the land located within the township zone, Greater Mission Beach Business Precinct, and is vegetated and vacant. To the east, the site adjoins land located within the Environmental Management and Conservation Zone and is vegetated and vacant. To the south, the site adjoins land located within the Environmental Management and Conservation Zone and has an established large home site dwelling. To the west, the site adjoins Tully Mission Beach Road, being a state-controlled road. The development application was impact accessible and therefore public notification was undertaken. The applicant advised that public notification requirements were carried out in accordance with the Planning Act. A total of 62 properly made submissions were received by Council during the notification period. Submissions are categorised as follows. 55 submissions raised objections to the proposed development and 7 submissions supported the proposed development. In addition to this, Council also received an online petition raising objections to the proposed development with 372 signatures at the time of submissions closing. However, this petition was not considered to be properly made submission due to the fact that it did not state the residential address of all submission makers and the contents of the submission attached to the petition was not signed by all submission makers. Key concerns raised within the 55 submissions objecting to the proposed development have been categorised into 3 categories, being the potential impact of the proposed development on good quality agricultural land values of the site, the potential impacts of the proposed development on environment, fauna, especially the southern Cassowary, and cultural heritage native title values of adjoining sites, and the potential impact of the proposed development on residences and the amenity of the Greater Mission Beach area. The key points raised within the 7 submissions supporting the proposed development are the benefit of the proposed development to the Mission Beach area, the benefit of to the local economy through the creation of jobs during the construction and operational phases, the small scale of the development and minimal environmental impact, and the benefit of having a dedicated air service for emergencies in Mission Beach. The discussion of the relevant issues associated with the proposed development are contained within the report. The proposed development triggered referral to the state government as a concurrence agency. It is noted that the proposed development was triggered for referral due to the site's proximity to the state-controlled road. There was no environmental issues which triggered referral to the application under the relevant requirements of the Planning Act. It is noted that Council has no jurisdiction over the triggers associated with the referral of the development application under the requirements of the planning regulation. This is done by the state government. It is noted that the Southern Cassowary is listed as endangered under federal environment law, being the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. The Southern Cassowary is also a listed value of the Wet Tropics of Queensland World Heritage Area. Listed threatened species and World Heritage Areas are matters of national environmental significance. Under the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, an action will require approval from the Federal Environment Minister if the action has, will have, or is likely to have a significant impact on a matter of national environmental significance. It is noticed that Council also has no jurisdiction over the triggers associated with the referral of the development application under the requirements of this Act. However, Council has included an advice note within the conditions in regards to this issue. In concluding, to ensure that the impact of the proposed development on the surrounding locality is minimised, the development has been conditioned as follows. Limiting the hours of operation, including takeoff, flight and landing of helicopters to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday to Sunday. No takeoff, flight or landing of these helicopters or audible noise from facility is permitted outside these hours, with the exception of emergency situations. Ensuring that the remnant vegetation, including the vegetation mapped as Cassowary habitat within the Cassowary Coast Regional Council Planning Scheme, including the Cassowary Habitat Corridor as identified on the Environmental Significance Overlay Map, must not be cleared unless clearing is for a lawful purpose under the provisions of the Vegetation Management Act, which once again is managed by the State Government. Ensuring that the helipad meets the standards and recommendations of heliports as set out in the relevant CASA standards. Ensuring that once airborne, helicopters will head directly east over the Coral Sea prior to heading towards intended destinations. Ensuring that the operations of the facility are limited to helicopters operated exclusively by Mission Beach Helicopters or another related entity operated by the directors or shareholders or the applicant owner. Ensuring that all helicopters taking off and landing from the site have a maximum weight limit of 5,700 kilograms to limit the type of helicopters operating from the site to smaller size helicopters. Provision of adequate on-site car parking spaces to contain the operations of the site, operations of the development within the site. The requirement for adequate fuel storage and bunding, and the requirement that noise from the site must not emanate from the subject land to a degree that would cause an environmental nuisance, having regard to the provisions of the Environmental Protection Act and the Environmental Protection Regulation. The proposed development has been conditioned to allow temporary relaxation of some of these conditions in the event that helicopter flight operations are required in response to an emergency situation. It is noted that the granting of a development permit on the site for the proposed development does not mean that the zoning of the land changes from rural to industrial. The proposed development facilitates a change of land use from just nurseries, plants, garden centre, and adds air services, being an aviation facility, in accordance with the intensity outlined in the approved plans and supporting documentation only, which is 3 helicopters to be stored on the site at any one time. The proposed development is considered to represent an appropriate use of the land given the rural nature of the area and separation from residences. The proposed development does not compromise the intent of the rural zone in this particular location, as the impact on the land for rural production, surrounding residences and environment is relatively minor. Therefore, the application is generally consistent with the provisions of the Cassowary Coast Council Planning Scheme and the Far North Queensland Regional Plan. The proposed development for a material change of use for air services, being an aviation facility, is recommended for approval, subject to reasonable and relevant conditions. I'm happy to answer questions, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Jones. Councillor Barnes.
Good, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, so much work has gone into this from the public, the town planners and also the applicant. This development approval, it's been recommended this recommendation has been recommended for approval, but my major concern is noise. Now, I know this is rural land and crops can be grown there and spray planes can be spraying chemical every day. The local council has the control over aircraft while they're on the ground, and the minute it's 20 mil off the ground, this is a CASA issue. I just want to make people aware of that, because recently I attended a rally at Mitre Street and I was very frustrated not to be able, especially by law, to answer concerns that were raised at the rally. And subjects that were raised were operating hours. They were saying 6 till 6. Well, we know now they've been changed from, as you just said, 7 to 6 Monday to Friday, 8 to 6 Saturday, Sunday. The block deemed for future development? No. The whole block under material change of use? No. Just the area in question. Big helicopters is a no. We know it's just medium to small. A lot of these things have been changed and people haven't sort of moved with it. The flight path is now better explained. So, So, further to Council's conditional approval, I move that Council note particularly...
Hang on, Councillor Barnes. We've got to process this one first, and you're going to move a motion after, are you?
Yeah, I just thought if I brought this up in general discussion, it may be discussed.
Yeah.
We don't have to move it, do we, Mr. Mayor?
All right.
We don't have to vote on it. Can't I move it and we talk on it?
Well, we've got this other motion, the recommendation in front of us first.
Okay.
And we'll deal with that, and then we'll come to yours after. If you want to make a general comment about this recommendation, I'll accept that.
I'll just finish.
Yep.
Without using the word moved, if you don't mind.
Yep.
It's my motion is going to talk on. It's not a pilot training school. Its only training is for pilots employed by the actual owner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. I understand the emphasis of what you're highlighting because it has come up at the rallies, and we'll deal with your motion after we deal with the officer's recommendation. All right. Any further questions of the officer, please? Councillor Farinelli.
Just through the Mayor, just a few things that I want to say. I understand there is a group of people in the Mission Beach community that are unhappy with the location of this development. They are predominantly afraid of the effect it will have on the southern Cassowary and on their peaceful lifestyle. The southern Cassowary has lived alongside the people of Mission Beach since the area was developed. After all, the Cassowary was there first. On the C4 Community for Coastal and Cassowary Conservation website, there are 3 specific areas in the Wit Tropics that are identified as hotspots for cassowaries: the Daintree, Kuranda and Atherton Tablelands, and Mission Beach. I've checked every website relating to these areas and cassowary awareness, and on each page, they identify these 4 key threats to cassowaries. First, loss of habitat through clearing for residential settlement and agricultural expansion. Second, fragmented habitat, especially from roads and subdivisions. Third, vehicle traffic. Roadkills are the #1 cause of adult cassowary deaths. And dogs, which are especially aggressive to chicks and juveniles, and feral pigs impact their habitat. The C4 website also explains that the Daintree area has the problem of roads cutting through the birds' home ranges. The Kuranda and Atherton Tablelands area has the problem of habitat loss, fragmented by roads and dogs, and the Mission Beach area suffers extensive habitat loss due to the degree that the birds have been squeezed into unnaturally small home ranges. They are forced to seek food from plantation sources, and this closeness to human settlement brings them into more frequent contact with dogs. This is all straight off the website. As they try to move around the remaining patches of habitat between the beach and the sloping hinterland behind it, they are commonly run over by cars. Nowhere did I find a mention about the threat of helicopters, but then in my opinion that could be because helicopters fly and cassowaries don't. My search found numerous helicopter tour companies that fly over the Daintree, and one promotes its 30-minute helicopter flights as a low altitude and thus close up look at rainforest canopy. I also located a map on the C4 website that shows cassowary deaths in the Mission Beach area that was produced in 2007 by the EPA QPWS. Unfortunately, I was unable to find one more recent, so we've had to use this map as a guide. This map shows the locations of the most cassowary deaths were at the northernmost point, being 5 deaths, and southernmost point, being 11 deaths. These were deaths known to be due to vehicle collision and reported to QPWS. The good news for those in opposition to this development is that your hard work to educate people about living with cassowaries, I believe, is working. People are wary. I am afraid to drive down your streets just in case I might hit one, and so are the many people I speak to. I'm led to believe that the cassowary numbers are on the rise, and I hope that is true. Where I once used to go to Eddy Bay, which is in my backyard, and see 1 cassowary, I now go there regularly and see 3. As for the loss of a peaceful lifestyle, Helicopters already fly around Mission Beach. I spoke to a former mayor of this area who has taken a joy flight in a helicopter out of Marks Park on one of its market days. Marks Park is, as identified in the report, is a designated landing area, and he advised me that joy flights were often on offer on market days. Marks Park is smack bang in the middle of Mission Beach, residential developments and cassowary corridors, as identified in the map that the protesters had attached to their flyer that they were handing out. The whole region is exposed to helicopters and planes flying around for variable reasons. The helicopters in Mission Beach carry people. The helicopters and planes that fly over my third generation farm do not. They carry chemicals and I don't like it. And I was there first. But we live in a progressive world, and I am so thankful that we also live in a progressive region, and I am proud of that.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. Councillor Chewy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors. As we are all aware, this has become quite an emotive issue at Mission Beach for some time. I have been trying to think of the words that best sum up the angst within some of the community about the proposed project. The word that came to my mind was ethos. So I looked up the definition, a Greek word meaning character that is used to describe the guiding beliefs or ideals that characterise a community. In my head that worked, and from the many, many emails that I've received and shared with my fellow councillors and officers, it is apparent that a number of our community, Mission Beach community, feel that the facility simply does not align with the ethos that is Mission Beach. There are concerns about noise, wildlife, land values and increased traffic, and the impact each of those will have on the surrounds. The feeling that these emails convey is that people are not against a new business coming to the area. It is all about location, location, location. I have in my hand a document signed by hundreds of people who have serious concerns. The issues go to noise, environmental protection, and peaceful enjoyment of the area, and several other concerns. There is nothing that lends itself to the lifestyle that Mission Beach is renowned for by having this facility in the heart of Mission Beach. And it is for this reason and those listed above that I will not be supporting the recommendation. Whilst we may have a differing opinion within Council and also the Mission Beach community, I believe it is important that we show respect for each other and accept and value value differences of opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Councillor Millwood.
So, in my decision in the proposal today for the material change of use for a proposed aviation facility has been made after the consultation with our experienced planning team, reports from the developer and community consultation. This development does meet the requirements in our planning scheme, operational plans and corporate plan. This development will enhance our community and bring with it some much needed economic stimulation to our economy. I also just want to reinforce that the Council's decision today is only about approving the site for safe storage of helicopters and a car park and fuel storage. It is not to do with the flying of helicopters. I also want to point out that of all of the submissions that were raised in objecting to the helipad, that we have since received some of those to be revoked due to the false information that the people were given. There was also a study that was brought to our attention that was done by scientist Nigel Tucker, which also stated that the effect of cassowaries from helicopters is actually unknown. So given all of the information and the facts that I have been given, I trust in our planning team, and in making my decision today, I would also like to commend the work done by C4 and the Mission Beach Cassowary groups and their continuous dedication in protecting the southern cassowary, and I'm sure that this will continue and we can work together and all be cassowary and work together and have positive outcomes. My duty as a councillor is to make a decision that is unbiased and in the best interest of the whole of the Cassowary Coast region. I do believe that Mission Beach community will still live a peaceful lifestyle in all of this, and on that note, I'd like to move the motion that we accept the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Farinelli. Councillors, any further discussion on that recommendation? I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? 6 in favour, and Councillor Chewy, you're voting against. Okay, thank you. Councillor Barnes, we'll go to your second motion now.
Good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Carrying on from where I left off, I move that council particularly I move that council note particularly that the approval is not a pilot training school. The only training is for pilots employed by the owner.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're moving that. Do you have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Baines. Any further comment, councillors, or questions? If not, put it to the vote. All in favour? 6 again in favour, and Councillor Chewy voting against. Okay. Thank you, councillors. I just want to make a comment about today's development application. I'd like to first acknowledge my fellow councillors who have made a difficult decision in the face of elevated public scrutiny from members of the community who sat on both sides of this decision. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge the interested members of the community who have taken the time to lodge formal submissions and provide feedback. In December 2020, Council voted to pass a motion to defer the decision in order for councillors to have additional time to consider the report and recommendation. To quote a recent Council statement, the act of deferring the decision does not reopen the public notification period, nor does it provide additional opportunity for consultation. During the deferred period, each councillor ensured that they were well informed and could make a considered and informed decision in this matter. Interested members of the public were provided with the opportunity to make a formal submission during the notification period, and submissions were received and reviewed by council staff as part of this application. Furthermore, councillors have been happy to receive correspondence from the community both for and against this project, which some members of the community have utilised. The assessment process by council was robust and conducted with integrity, and I thank our planning staff. When councillors are making decisions, they must ensure that decisions are consistent with legislation, the local government principles and council's own policies. The application is overall consistent with the Cassowary Coast Regional Council Planning Scheme 2015 and the FNQ Regional Plan 209 to 231. Whilst I understand that for many it is an emotive topic, councillors have overall come to an agreement for the application to be approved. In my opinion, there has been no reasonable reason for the application not to be approved, as the application meets the aforementioned criteria. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we now move on to general business. Councillors, any general business?
Yes, through you. Yes, through you, Mr.
Councillor Pervin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just for Mr. Sadler, just the Works for Queensland project that was undertaken across the road from the Innisfail Town Pool, the bird viewing platform. Is there some vegetation management to be undertaken there in relation to the platform that was recently constructed and finished?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Pervin. Most definitely. So, as part of that work, under the code of practice for marine plants, there will be some maintenance work that will occur around that to enable the viewing platform to be able to be utilised better in relation to the vegetation around it.
Yeah, just take my hat off. It's a beautiful it's a beautiful platform, and I went down there recently, and you can't see left, right. It's pretty difficult.
Thank you, Councillor Pervin. Any further general business? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have had a request from quite a few people in the community. It's been going on for a while, and this relates to our signage within the community. I know we're looking at signage programs going forward. We can be classed as having quite an older demographic within our region, and we have some people that are differently abled. And the request is around having some signage up to direct people where the public toilets are so that they can actually find them. I know when my mother lives with us now, when she first came to town, I mean, I could describe them to her, but she said as a stranger wandering the street, they really have no line of sight to where the public toilets are. We have many available, and these have been issues going over the years, Mr Mayor, that you quite rightly remember. So there's lots of them there, but possibly a little bit of signage just to direct people. And it's not just Innisfail, it's in Tully, it's at Mission. You know, we've got toilets there, and being able to get people to them or make them aware of where they may be. Maybe an app on the phone, but I think a couple of little signs up. And it's just a request, Mr Mayor. I know it's been discussed previously, so I'd like it to go up for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. You've taken that on board, Mr Sadler?
Mr Chair, I'll take that on notice.
It's been noted, Councillor Baines. Any further? Councillor Chewy.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the team. That we had a burnt-out car down at the back of South Mission Jackie boat ramp. It was not there for long, so I just want to shout out to the staff who removed it very quickly because it was an eyesore. It was dangerous. I believe the police are trying to find out who left it there. It was just completely burnt out. It was a mess. So thank you to the team who responded so quickly, especially over the Christmas period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Any further general business? I just want to take the opportunity to congratulate Tully on taking out the Golden Gumboot and Councillor Millwood for being Council's ambassador in that media splurge. I'll call it a splurge. You seem to be enjoying it. It's put us on the map, but more importantly, the water that came to give you the Golden Gumboot has also gone on to the Tully Oval, and the recently turfed oval had its first mow, and it's looking outstanding. So the rain, while you won the Gumboot, has helped our new oval, and it's going to be looking really good for the first football game 2021. Innisfail has the Guinness Book record for the longest banana split. Tully's got the Golden Gumboot, so there's a bit of competition going on, and it's healthy. So congratulations to Councillor Millwood and Tully in general.
Through the chair, might I add to that, with the beginning of the football season will come the first football game, which we hope to host our throwing of the gumboot, which we have some money on offer and some nice trophies. So watch this space.
Sounds good. Any further general business, councillors? If not, I'd ask that somebody move that we go into committee, please. Moved by Councillor Barnes, seconded by Councillor Chewy. Just checking with Daniel. Yeah.
Just before you skip out, should I mention again my conflict of interest in item 9.1, and I won't be participating in that debate.
Okay.
Thank you.
I say it's been moved and seconded that we go into committee. Everybody in favour? It's carried unanimously. Okay. Okay, councillors, would somebody move that we now go out of committee, please? Moved by Councillor Barnes, seconded by Councillor Farinelli. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Hand over to Ms Fick to present her report 9.1, Quarterly Outstanding Sundry Debtors Report.
This report is presented to Council for Council's information, highlighting the current status of sundry debtors. The recommendation is that the outstanding sundry debtors report be received and noted.
Any questions? Councillor Milton, you're moving that. Seconded by Councillor Farinelli. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And item 9.2, the Quarterly Outstanding Rates and Charges Report. Ms Fick.
This report was presented for Council information regarding the status of the rates and charges to December 2020, or as otherwise stated. The recommendation is that the report be received and noted.
Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Meeting closed at 11:34.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it was discovered before Council considered item 9.1 or 9.2 that Councillor Baines had a declarable interest in respect of both those items, and for the record he left the room, took no part in any discussion, didn't contribute to the debate or vote on it. So whilst he previously had mentioned he had a conflict in 9.1, he corrected that for the record.
Thank you, Mr Gott. Meeting closed at 11:35. Thank you.
Thank you.